Would you rather fight 100 horse-sized ducks or one duck-sized horse? Wait, did I get the right room?
It's a question as old as time, and it's 100%, 100 duck-sized horses. Always, always.
That's what I said. I feel like you can wade through them and just.
Have you seen? Could you conceptualize the size of a beak on a horse-sized duck? It would be an impenetrable fortress of pain
and duckness.
Weaponry, yeah, and duckness, absolutely.
Lots of ducking around.
Quacking your bones in twain. That was awful.
I feel like you've answered this question before.
Yeah, no, I have answered it before. I mean, it's because of ducks are very small, and I have boots with. I just wear boots with points on, or like steel toe-capped boots or something, assuming that was an option as part of the narrative, and just start wailing, just start booting them. You know, like Jack Black in Anchorman when he kicks the dog off the bridge. That kind of thing. Just boot one after the other. I don't know if you've done 100, like if you played football at all, but just like kicking a ball 100 times, not a big deal.
Yeah, I think like.
Although they are horses, they would be fast. But I mean, if they're fast, then they're either going to be in your area or not. It's not like you're going to waste a kick. They're either going to be there or not that fast. Not faster than a human foot.
But the question is, like, I feel like horses, they've got a bit of a bite to them, and a kick. So they might just wear you.
Yeah, but the size of a duck, the mouth would be inconsequential.
Yeah, but think about all that pressure in a tiny hoof. Just like.
Okay, well, that's a different question.
Might be breaking your legs, and then you're on the floor, and then
if you're talking about it like that, like that would no. But by that definition, when you kick the duck-sized horse, you'd stub your toe because it would be like kicking the mass of a full-sized horse. That's a whole different question.
Oh yeah. Well, for the next hour.
Exactly.
The anatomy of ducks and horses.
Well, it's physics, isn't it? Yeah. So you've got to think these things through, Joe.
I think you've just offended.
You can't just pull elements of
duckery,
mechanics. Yeah.
Horsery, duckery. Yeah. Well, this is the problem whenever I get introduced with a question such as that one, because there's no neat way of tying it into any relevant type of conversation that you could possibly have.
Unless there's a concept album about ducks or horses, which there is not.
Oh, that was my next question.
Right, I'm sorry.
Any other animals in the offing?
Sorry, Joe. No, I'm afraid not. Although my girlfriend has a tiny dog, a little Chihuahua, which wears a bow tie. So there's nothing about that to do with music at all. But there you go. So I have been seen in Long Island, New York, walking a Chihuahua. Which is a sight to behold, because I'm quite a tall boy, and the Chihuahua is quite a tiny boy. So there you go.
Would you rather fight? Yeah.
No comment.
So the I don't know where I was going with that anyway. But the that actually weirdly, you mentioned walking around LA, and so I feel like we're from a similar part of the world.
Oh yeah, where are you from?
I'm from Surrey.
Oh, cool. Basically same.
Okay, so I was sort of brought up around like Leatherhead in Surrey.
Yeah. Okay.
Whereabouts are you brought up?
I was born in Bristol, which is actually where I live now, which is for people watching or listening from overseas or outside the UK, it's not Surrey, but it's about 2.5 hours away to the west. But I grew up, went to school, secondary school, college, all that stuff in like the Hampshire-Surrey border. So Guildford would have been my nearest city. So I actually started by playing a lot of open mic nights around Guildford. So I would kind of figure out little solo guitar-y things and then go out and play them in pubs and bars all around Guildford. So that was kind of it. I think my dad worked near Leatherhead as well. So, but yeah, so I guess we are from a relatively similar area.
Leatherhead is a hub of all things.
No, it's not.
No, it's not a hub of anything. So yeah, it's a boiler room, one of the ones that you would have...
That's the one. Yeah, the boiler room in Guildford is a great spot. For anyone who doesn't know the boiler room in Guildford, which is probably most of you, it has a like a Chinese restaurant, like a Chinese takeout attached to the side of the building. So all the food backstage is awesome Chinese takeout. And it's a fun room. It's like a rock club. It's lots of fun memories from playing there for sure.
That's reminded me of a question from a guest ages ago, and it was, what was the worst tour meal you've ever had?
Ooh, that is a good question.
Or just like music venue, like meal part of a rider,
I mean, the worst would just be nothing, like not having anything, not being provided with anything, and then expected to go and play like a 2-hour show or something. That sucks because you're not a machine, you're a human being. I mean, water at the very minimum. Like, there are some venues that won't give you water. It's like, okay, come on, dude. But in terms of the actual food, I mean, Germany gets a bad rap sometimes. I love Germany. I love playing there, but sometimes you'll play in these obscure places where it will literally be some stale bread and some slices of cheese. You know, like McDonald's. You know, the non-cheese cheese, that kind of thing. But that's kind of is what it is. Like make your own sandwich, but it's all shit and covered in flies, kind of thing. I can't really think of anything specifically awful. I don't really have any dietary requirements, but my friends who are vegan or vegetarian, they find it really hard in Europe sometimes, because it'll just be like, oh, here's your bread and cheese, but oh, just don't eat the cheese. It's some bread. You know, that'll be the meal.
Yeah,
But,
cheese, vegetarian, vegan. Yeah, it's fine.
yeah, vegan. Oh yeah, just don't eat the cheese. Have some bread.
Yeah.
Or have like the whole meal will have a side salad. It's like, just eat the salad. You know, that kind of thing. But no, I last show meal I had was really good actually. It was at a venue in Tilburg in the Netherlands. I played a few days ago with Tommy Emmanuel, opening for Tommy Emmanuel, and the catering was awesome. It was like full on like curry, but like British curry style with like the poppadoms and everything like that. That was awesome. Yeah.
Nice.
No bad things to say about the Netherlands, that's for sure.
Awesome.
Except for Schiphol Airport, it rhymes with shithole for a reason.
Wait, what was that? I missed
4 hour waiting time for security on this last trip. 4 hours.
Ooh.
Because of all the chaos in the world.
Jeez, there is chaos in the world indeed. That's
I want to stay at home and just stream. It's like touring has almost become horrible now. If it wasn't for the shows, it would be horrible. It's like, who was it that said, was it BB King or someone? Maybe it wasn't BB King. It was like, you get paid to travel and then you just do the shows for free. That's kind of what it feels like, right?
Yeah, there's some. I mean, I've only ever done one tour, and it was such a weird one. We got invited. It was a few years ago with my old band, and we got invited to tour Ukraine of all places.
Oh, cool!
And it was really cool. It was a bit out of nowhere. We hadn't even done UK, and we were straight.
Oh, it's the same two first letters.
Ukraine. And actually, the best and worst tour meal I've had was both. Well, we did 5 days or 5 dates, and I went from worst to best. I think literally one night after the other, actually. Nice. So yeah. But I wanted to when you mentioned Tommy Emmanuel, rather than asking all about his sort of numerous guitar-related questions, what's it kind of like building a sort of a relationship with these people that I'm sure you've sort of idolized for a long time, and you know, sort of in the guitar world. What's it like kind of becoming friends with people in the industry in that way, you know, that maybe, so for example, everyone I chat's in the podcast, they're all people I've been aware of mostly anyway for quite a long time. So it's kind of weird then talking to them, and I'm actually saying this almost in real time. It's like we're talking to you or anyone who there's an imbalance where I know a lot more about you probably than you do about me. I'd actually feel a bit uncomfortable if you knew more about me than I do about you.
Well, Joe.
It's a weird way to build a relationship.
Sorry, yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone is born the same way, or at least for the most part. Everybody dies. You know, there's no disconnect like that once you get to know someone, certainly. I mean, in the case of Tommy Emmanuel, he would be super intimidating if he wasn't such a nice guy, because he is like the greatest guitar player that there's ever lived, in my opinion. I mean, it's hard to, you know, take taste out of the equation. I'm not talking like, you know, say you have a diehard metal guy who like only listens to metal. He'd be like, no, I prefer Ingrid Malmsteen or whatever, you know. So take taste out of the equation. I mean, literally, in terms of knowledge, in terms of show, in terms of work ethic, in terms of he was at one point the youngest touring musician in the world at age 6. You know, he's been a professional touring musician since the age of 6, and he's now sort of, you know, in his mid to late 60s. Yeah, that is super intimidating. But he is like the most kindest, most welcoming, like enthusiastic, fun guy. And when you play with, like playing with a mate when you're 13 years old and you're having your first band practice, you know, and he has that kind of childlike energy. So you don't see the legacy. You just see a person in that moment. And that's the case of everything. Like, I'm friends with a lot of musicians who have a lot of fans, but they're just hangs. In fact, I was listening to actually Misha Mansour's podcast with Everyone Loves Guitar, with Craig at Everyone Loves Guitar. I think that's the name of the podcast. And he was actually talking about me and our relationship, how it's like he's never actually seen me play or anything. And he was kind of saying this. He's like, oh yeah, I've known Mike for like 10 years, but I've literally never even seen him play guitar. What? Because it's just a hang, and I think that's important. If you get on with someone, it's a hang, and you have things in common through music, but it's not like, oh my God, I want to hang out with you because you have fans, in the case of the Periphery guys, I've become dear friends with them over the years, but that's through sort of circumstance. Like, we just met because we were both on tour in the same city at the same time, nothing to do with anything like that. So yeah, I don't really know how to answer your question. It's just like, it's down to the individual, I guess. Like, there's probably some people that if I met, I would definitely like freak out a little bit.
I've told this once before, but I'll tell you briefly. It's quite funny. I kind of don't really do them anymore, but I've done like one or two of the sort of meet and greets where you pay to meet the band for all of about 30 seconds. I get why they do it, because you need to make money in that, so it's nothing against them, but obviously there's a big queue and you're just one of the herd. And I met Corey Taylor when he was with Stone Sour on one of their tours, and I sort of wanted to sort of thank him because he kind of inspired me in part to drop out of uni, like doing business, and go and pursue music and go to music school. I was like, Slipknot was a big step for me into like liking that kind of music, and then I'm a bit of a metalhead, and then, but I think I just said to him, like, I think I only mentioned the dropping out part. I don't think I mentioned the music part. So as far as I'm aware, I think I've just told Corey that, like, I just dropped out of uni. Thanks. Like, don't think I mentioned that. So I think I was obviously probably a bit flustered, I guess, in the moment. I didn't think to mention that.
I mean, that's totally normal if someone's had a big impact on you. I mean, and I see that a lot at the merch table. And I work a lot with. In fact, tomorrow I'm going out to start rehearsals for a UK run thing with this guy Justin Hayward, who's the frontman of the band called the Moody Blues, from like big hits in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on and so forth. And his fans have obviously been with him, since the 60s in some cases, and that's a different kind of fan relationship. That's like a pre-social media. Like, I had your poster on my wall and you were unattainable, and now you are here in the same room as me. What? That's a whole different thing. So I think now with social media, everyone's way more accessible. I don't think there's the same sort of cult of celebrity that there perhaps once was, that came with anonymity. I mean, Justin was telling me once that they were the first band ever to sell out Madison Square Garden twice in the same day. So they did like a matinee show and an evening show, and they would go out into the queue and just hang out with the fans, and no one knew it was the band. No one knew it was them, because for them it was their faces weren't on the albums. It was just artwork and music, and there wasn't that same kind of cult of celebrity. So it's definitely a different time now, and I guess I'd argue that, like, for younger people coming up now, maybe there is, I don't know, maybe there is more of a close connection before you end up meeting someone that might dilute that kind of crazy exploding introvert experience that there once was. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just being very naive.
I guess it's like exposure, isn't it? The more you see someone, you just get used to the idea of seeing them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, absolutely. Like, everyone has seen. Yeah, exactly. Instagram. You follow people. I was going to say something really vulgar there about Tommy Lee's penis, but you know what I mean. It's exposure.
It's literal exposure. Yeah. Yeah.
Crime. Literal crime.
Yeah. But the memes, the question is, was it worth it for the memes? And I think
it's always worth it for the memes.
I know. There's very little that isn't.
The memes owns the world.
There you go. I was only talking about memes last. Huh?
If you're in control of memes, you're in control of everything.
So this actually goes on to a point. I had a brief listen through your podcast that you did with Mark from Periphery.
Oh yeah.
And he was saying about you having a dark sense of humour. Has that always been? I'm not going to ask you to.
He's the worst. He is the worst for that.
For dark humour.
Yeah.
What have you ever found yourself getting in trouble for dark
No,
humor?
no, no. I mean, when you're with friends, it's different. You know, when you're with friends, you're just goofing around and shocking each other. You know,
Yeah.
but things are different now. You know, like you certainly wouldn't. I don't know. Also, the line of what is dark humor has shifted so far into just humor that like, it's quite hard to know what is dark humor. One person's dark humor could be another person who's 5 years older, just regular joke. Like, so I don't know. I guess it depends on your definition, your age, and your upbringing, and where you.
Yeah, it does. Hey, I'm going to sort this camera out because my exposure is. This is what you get when you buy a
Yeah, too much
HD
exposure.
quote unquote webcam.
Exposure. You can die from exposure.
Tommy Lee would probably beg to differ, but yeah,
My bright light outside my little outside area.
yeah, I'm foolishly relying on just sunlight, which
Same.
musicians never do. Yeah, it's a weird one because obviously I feel like you can. It's a difficult landscape where like one joke was sort of okay a few years ago and now it's not, and it's a bit difficult to kind of. I feel sorry for comedians trying to keep up with all of that, like with what what'll. I mean, there's a million jokes that'll get you in trouble now, but it's a tricky. I'm glad I'm a musician, not a comedian, because I feel like that's much harder to navigate.
It is. There is some crossover though. I will say. Like I did a tour recently where I don't want to go into too much detail because like I don't want to like lose my gigs or whatever. But I was like playing a show in an unnamed city in the west of the USA, and like the guy, the kind of front house guy was like, "Yo, is there anything else you want me to say? Anything you want me to say to introduce you?" You know, and I said, "Yeah, I'll just do blah 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 blah." He said he couldn't for reasons that still baffle me. I don't really want to go into too many details, but it was to do with like one's title, you know, how one would announce a show. You know, it's very strange for me as a 33-year-old from England, but you know, that's another thing. Is like, I guess there's an amount of respecting people's culture is just polite. You know, it's a polite thing to do, and I was always raised to just be polite. So I'm not really going to be a stick in the mud about stuff like that, but it was a little strange. Yeah, but
Yeah.
doesn't mean doesn't mean good or bad. It's strange, and also I think people should be allowed to have a little break if they don't keep up with the trends that change every day. Especially if you're like a single mum with like 5 kids. Do you really think you have time to just like check social media every day for what the latest rules are? No, you don't. So let's give people a break, please.
Yeah, I think my main criticism really is that I feel like obviously celebrities, the whole deal is, and even just people with a following, not even celebrities. Obviously, if everyone in the world had the following, if everyone in the world was followed by 100,000 other people, I think we'd all realise everyone's messing up quite a lot.
Yeah, exactly. It's very easy to tear someone down. Very easy. It's the easiest thing in the world, and it feels good. That's why cyberbullying is a thing. That's why bullying is a thing. It feels good to belittle someone else, and it's very easy. What is harder is actual time invested in understanding someone's point of view.
Mm.
So sorry, my phone's going bleep
I'm
bleep.
loving the.
Yeah, the double bleeps. Do not disturb is now officially on. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there. I guess I'm just trying to toe the line between understanding people's point of view, but also trying to understand that different people keep up with trend changes at different paces. My grandma or my mum is not going to understand any of the past 5 years of change in rules when it comes to what one should or shouldn't say on the internet because they still type in all capital letters. You know, it's like let's give them a break.
Yeah.
I just come down on the side of give them a break.
Yeah, I think a bit of leniency is useful, but with your kind of relationship with sort of the internet and navigating that, how is your kind of again, I can't remember exactly what which interview it was or resource or whatever I was reading or of yours, where you were saying that you're not like a regular sort of YouTuber, for example, but actually you've had a lot of success on YouTube, with building an audience.
What a YouTuber has changed, or the definition of a YouTuber, especially since the pandemic. It's when it started, it was so when I released my first album 9 years ago, right? And from that, back then, what you did was take maybe the 2 best songs and make music videos for them and stick them online. And that was the whole album. Now, it would be, I'm doing a video for every single song, of course, because otherwise it's wasted content. I'm doing a little parenthesis with that, wasted content. Now it's all about singles and putting things out so that you please our Silicon Valley overlords, and you tickle the teeth of the algorithm. That's what people have to do. But you know what? When you do that and you live that lifestyle, my experience is that it's not fun. You end up miserable and you lose the joy of life and actually living your life. One of the things I want to do with my life, and I've been blessed to be able to do, is to travel the world as much as possible and meet different cultures and different people. And, I certainly wouldn't have met my girlfriend if I had just stayed in my studio here making YouTube videos. So, personally, my own response to becoming a quote-unquote YouTuber, i.e. someone that puts out multiple videos a week, I would say, and their primary source of income could be their advertising revenue from Google or passive sales through the description of those videos. That's what I would call a YouTuber. My primary income source comes from concert fees and selling merchandise at the table. It's not really much different in terms of the mechanic there. The only difference is that you're in front of a real group of people that you can interact with face to face rather than in a chat or in a comment section. And I find that I get a much greater happiness from interacting with real people because I'm quite an extroverted guy. Like I draw energy from others, and it's not the same if it's just words on a screen. It's just not. I like to meet people and then they say, hey, next door there's this cool cafe or this cool bar, let's hang there, cool, and then you're talking to them and you're actually engaged. So that's the thing, actual true engagement with another human being brings a lot of happiness and fulfillment, and then I go to sleep very well that night. Whereas if every time I get into this YouTube world of a new video, checking the comments, checking the views, and then this video did 10% less than my last one. I'm a piece of shit. I'm going to go to bed really unhappy. It's just not the way to live. Humans aren't built that way, man. Humans are built that we're creatures of communication. So maybe I'm a bit old-fashioned in this crazy new world. But yeah. I don't even know what your question was. I just started talking.
I don't even know what my question was, but it sounded interesting. So
Yeah.
do you feel like the kind of extraversion or extroverted tendencies kind of are part of why maybe you pursued music in the first place and the performance
Absolutely
side?
not. No, absolutely not, because I wasn't extroverted. I was just you can't get like I don't know. I feel like the musicians who I really admire are all super introverted, and I was a super introverted teenager, and I didn't have a social life, and I was just practice all day long. Like most players who are like serious about what they do. But I had to learn to be an extrovert just because I'm not in a band. I just travel alone. I get the bus, go to the airport, fly somewhere alone. I'll go to Southeast Asia, don't speak the language, completely alone. If you are introverted, it's very hard to deal with that anxiety. So, and by doing a solo show, there's a lot of learning to talk on the mic to a room full of strangers while you're tuning the guitar in between songs, and so that kind of became a feature of personality. It was cultivated in the same way that anxiety is cultivated among young people who just do the social media thing. It's like you get a break from anxiety when you do a show. I've never had a show day where I felt sad or anxious, ever. The show is like the buzz, even if it's a bad show. There's a difference between feeling existentially anxious and kicking a trash can because you missed a run and you're annoyed with yourself. That's a different kind of thing, and I'd much rather kick a trash can than have existential dread keeping me up at night. Again, can't even remember what the question is. Just talking.
That's totally fine. Let me just I'm just going to close my door because there seems to be some sort of I don't even know what kind of work going on in my building, and it's very distracting. So
Okay, I can't hear anything.
Huh?
I can't hear any noises or anything, but okay.
I think there's someone on the roof, which the door closing may not help.
Right. Do your thing, man. I'll entertain any viewers with
a about 8 seconds.
Cool. What's up, guys? Don't forget to subscribe to Joe. And subscribe to me if you want. Hey,
Is
Joe.
that 8 seconds?
Exactly 8 seconds.
Huh?
Exactly 8 seconds. I was counting.
Oh, it's because this is this is the worst timing in the world. So, I, I have
I
a
can't hear anything, mate. Your mic is very directional. All I can hear is your voice.
yeah. Oh no, it's more for my own sanity.
Oh, okay.
I have a wasp nest above
Nice.
my building, and right now, about a meter away from me, is someone clearing out said wasp nest, and this is just perfect timing.
That's
So
awesome.
I will just hone in my concentration on here. So, uh, what do you think of wasp nests?
Well, you know what I think about bees is all male bees die when they sting you, but they also die when they have sex. So all male bees are just a bunch of nerds.
Well, only the living ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Ah,
Fun
I'm
fact about
more in
bees.
common with bees than I thought.
Yeah, nice, exclusive.
Jokes on them. I'm still alive.
There you go.
So yeah, what I was going to ask actually is, I thought it was a good question, right? So when you talked about developing and cultivating that sort of more extroverted side of you, and you mentioned earlier how you get energy from other people. Do you feel like it's maybe, I'm not trying to sort of correct you or anything, but do you feel like it's more confidence maybe than, do you feel like maybe you were always extroverted, but it's the confidence that you developed? Or was it an actual genuine feeling of getting that energy from other people that came along? Because I feel like I was, as a teenager, I wasn't massively shy, but I was kind of shy.
Yeah,
But I always did get energy from being around people, just the right people, you know?
yeah. I mean, I'm 33 now, so it's hard to remember exactly, but yeah, I think there's some truth to what you're saying. Confidence comes from experience. It's the same way that, if I'm doing a show, the first show of a tour, I'll be nervous, but then the third show of the tour, it's automatic and it's confident, just because you're in it and you're in a routine. So yeah, like the more I time. So for context, for listeners who don't know my touring situation, is that I since 2013 I've been on tour about 10 months of every year in total, which is obviously the vast majority of time. And the vast majority of that time has been in front playing shows, right? So maybe 200 shows a year, and the rest being kind of travel days or days off or whatever. Maybe 220, 230 shows a year. So yeah, that's habit, and it definitely grows your confidence for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and I learned a lot in that process as well about performing on stage and about having fun. Because going back to what I said before, if you're going to make something your livelihood and your living and how you spend your time, more importantly, you want to have fun, right? Who doesn't want to have fun with their time? So, in an effort to have more fun and to keep things fresh, I started goofing around a lot on stage. And that required confidence to begin with, because that's like putting your personality out there as well as you're playing. That's a whole different layer of kind of being naked, and just like sharing. And I realized that people really enjoyed that even more. And that ties into the advice that I give people when they're always asking me in like clinics or workshops about playing shows. And I always say just be honestly you, and if you and don't focus on all the mistakes and things like that, because like literally 2 days ago I was in Tilburg in the Netherlands. It was like 1,300 people or something. Special guest at Tommy Emmanuel. I'm the only person on stage. I'm playing. Everyone is focused on what I'm doing. It's not like they're looking at the drummer and I can get away with something. Everyone's looking at me, and I messed up, and I just did some goofy shtick, and everyone was fully with me, and then carried on, and it was great. The night before in Groningen, I was playing a Van Halen cover of Jump, and I crouched down. I was playing, and then as I stood up, my foot was on my cable, and it pulled out pop, both my cables. And
What
again,
about them pulling
I
you?
got everyone to do like a little clap along and give it up for this cable, woo, give it up for this cable, woo, give it up for Steve, our sound guy, woo, everyone say jump. And then as soon as they said jump, I was like in on the two, and like stuff like that, just being goofy, and having fun with a live show is one of the things that I love so much about the live experience. And you don't get that with the curated, heavily Pro Tools and processed audio output that we have to give as musicians. But you don't get that with live. That's actually something I really value about. Slight segue to a bit of self-promotion. I've just released or releasing, depending on when this comes out, an EP with Tommy Emmanuel. He has this series of EPs called Accomplice, Volume 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one's with a different artist. I'm Volume 3. It's five tracks we did together, and everything was one take, right? It was literally us in a studio on a day off, totally kind of unplanned. It wasn't even supposed to happen. We had some shows cancelled because of COVID, so we just went in the studio. Just a couple of mics, like really good mics. We're looking at each other face to face in the same room, no bigger than this. No click, no nothing. And we just played the tunes and it was all one take. And there's this honesty in that, which I really like. And I'm really interested in music like that, where it's not been super, super processed and produced to be perfect. It sounds like two humans just playing in the moment. And that is taking that live element. It's the same thing I have a live album out as well, which I released during the pandemic. And I've tried to capture that there as well. The actual energy of a real moment captured rather than a perfected kind of edited tune. Again, don't know what the question was. I was just talking.
I was going to say there's a lot to unpack there. Sorry, I was getting half blinded by the sunlight out the This is the most.
You need a studio.
I do need a studio.
Room.
Huh?
You need an actual room without wasps' nests.
I do, with wasp nests and invasive sunlight. Well, it's typical British weather. It's consistent all morning, and then the moment I start doing something, the wasps come out, and the sunlight actually. Oh, here we go. Let's ignore the technical difficulties. Hang on. That's a little less blinding on me now. There we go. Speaking of real life experiences in your music, I'm trying to recreate the same thing in a real conversation where I'd be distracted by a number of annoying things and people outside of it. So there we go. There's professionalism for you. But yeah, I mean, there's what you're kind of talking about with the being, I think that element of having that kind of real, especially in particularly, like I said, I'm a bit of a metalhead. It feels like there's something missing in some modern metal where it doesn't feel as human maybe as it did. If you listen to old, I heard you talk about Iron Maiden or if you listen to like Pantera or someone like that, where like it's not always on the line, because they didn't actually,
on the grid, yeah. Yeah, I mean that's definitely a thing, but that's a trend on technology in the same way that when autotune was invented, everyone started using that on their vocals a lot, and it became almost an instrument, an aesthetic. With advances in technology comes changes in trends, so more people can use it, right? So everything gets homogenized for a period of time, and then after that period of time has kind of got a little bit stale, then there'll be a counterculture, and that'll become the new thing. So right now there's a counterculture where I live of punk music. So I live in Bristol. The band Idols have really, really taken off in a really, really huge way, and that's almost like, I mean, culturally through our failed country that we share, and sonically and musically, bands like that are the counterculture, where they're less about perfection and more about creating an emotion. That's not to say that very processed, Pro Toolsian modern metal music isn't about emotion, but it's a style that eventually will run its course, and it will be a moment in time, and then things will go into a different direction, or there'll be more technology introduced to take it to a different kind of sound. Bands like Polyphia are a great example of that. They're awesome. They've created a sound that was enabled by technology, in a very large part, and they're kind of owning that right now. But then there are bands like Carbon, who are a super heavy metal band. They don't use a click. Everything's done, as far as I'm aware, live, where they just play together in a room, and it's just produced to sound awesome based on those kind of prerequisites, right? So, things change with technology and counterculture, and also what's happening in the world as well. I mean, we were in a very in a period of relative just chill times as people of our generation were growing up learning to play guitar, but now things are a little, I don't know, I feel like young people are now a little bit emotionally and socially and politically charged, so the music that they will end up creating might have a bit more attitude to it than a neatly polished Isotope RX experience.
Well, it's even as much as me, for example, when we were talking just before we started the podcast, saying like, well, I'd like to chat to you about stuff beyond music and musical sort of and guitar and things, because I think there's a bit of a calling for that, some more humanity behind. I think that's the thing, you get used to seeing. There's the perfected side of things, which all of us do. Why would you put out something online that isn't at least of a certain?
Yeah, because you're competing with a landscape of people who are using the technology that's available. So why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
But stylistically and fashion will change, and when fashion changes, then people will do different stuff. Like take the context of acoustic guitar music. Finger noise on the strings, squeak. I can get rid of that now using software. Or what I'd rather do is use coated strings so that when I sweat, I get less of an abrasive swipe when I move my hands, right? So there's organic ways and digital ways to solve the same problem there, or at least to reduce it. What is a little bit infuriating, just to be a little bit old man yells at cloud, right now, is that in the, I guess less so in the acoustic scene, but it's certainly very prevalent in the electric scene, is things can be edited so much because it's just a direct signal, right? And everything's reamped and whatever, rather than acoustic guitar where the room makes a difference, and it's a little harder to edit like an acoustic instrument, where it's not just transient like a drum. It does seem that there's a disconnect between what people are putting online and what's actually playable and what's actually replicatable live. And it seems that there's I could be massively mistaken, but there's players out there now who are either literally the greatest technical musician of all time by what they're putting out there, or it's just processed to fuck. And and when I see live clips of these kind of people, I'm like, okay, it was processed to fuck. Now that's not a knock on the people. It's a stylistic choice based on the technology to produce that recorded music experience. Live is always going to be live. Live is always going to be different. But the reason I say it's a little infuriating is because I'm looking at it through the lens of someone who's watching Tommy Emmanuel on the side of the stage most nights. And because he is so exceptional, and I know the work and the life and the knowledge and everything that he's achieved, I can see through when someone's just like, oh, another 14-year-old virtuoso, really? Or is it just edited, And when you see Tommy owning a room of 2,000 people doing his thing, it's just like, it's none of my business at the end of the day, but it does get a little irritating when you see a whole impressionable new generation of music fans who would equate them to be the same level of proficiency, who don't know, as we do, the difference between a heavily compressed electric guitar sound and an uncompressed raw electric guitar sound. That they don't know the tricks. So I'm waiting for the time where we're all educated enough that people can distinguish between the real deal, and I'm not saying these people are not the real deal, it's just a different genre, right? It's just a different style. It's a little irritating how I get sent the same videos of the same guitar players over and over again in my DMs from people who don't understand the difference between X and Y, but again, it's just stylistic, it's just a taste thing. It's like punk versus technical death metal, like whatever.
Yeah, I quite like the fact that it does seem like there's a bit of pushback against the process side of things. And again, I do, there's something so, especially as a metalhead, when the kick, the bass, and a heavy palm muted chug hit at the same time, it just has a
sub drop.
Yeah, and the reverse cymbal, and then a bit of a whatever, whack a gunshot in there. Why not? Just go for the full whack.
Go Public Enemy, just broken glass noises, sirens,
Either way, point being, so what I was going to say is, I'd like to record. I'd like to get back into writing more music and get a band together. And what I think I'd like to do is, instead of what we did was the typical drums, bass, guitar. We went actually drums, guitar, bass, which was weird, and then vocals. But what I'd like to do is actually do a live recording, but only record the drums, so that you get the drum sound then you could even edit. Say there's some little kick flares and fast little tom fills and stuff. You can still edit them to be.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like, I do that on my recordings. It's like I'll be like, oh, this section, let's swap out this section for this section on the session because this whole 7-minute take was awesome, but I fucked up these few things. So let me punch in. But then if it's not to a click, you can't do that. But
yeah, it's tricky. But I was thinking I'd like to find some way of humanizing it without pressing a humanize button, which is a weird thing to say in the
humanize button never works.
Mine doesn't.
Yeah, but it is amazing what you can do with technology. I mean, I recently went to Berlin to do a session for a unnamed project, and
that's what all my projects are called.
Well, basically, it was the first time I got really back into drum programming, because I don't really drum program because I play acoustic guitar, right? But I was demoing a genre which wasn't solo acoustic guitar, and I got the new Mixwave Gojira plugin from those guys. Those are great guys, by the way. Mixwave, great company. They got some great drum libraries, and just how it sounded, it just sounds so good, man. It's like, why would I need to hire a drummer at this point? It's wild, especially for drums. No offense intended for drummers, but similar results can be achieved with guitar virtual instruments now. Like, I have a friend who shall be remained nameless, but I know for a fact that all his guitars on all his music are all MIDI. It's crazy, and you would never know. It's wild, because he takes like a virtual instrument, programs it, all the whammy bar stuff, everything is all MIDI, and then he'll just run it through really good amp sims and really good, say the neural stuff or whatever. So that's kind of freaky. The acoustic guitars still sound unrealistic at this point, but we'll see where it goes. But
go on.
No, I was just saying there's nothing wrong with using these tools. These tools are available to make music quicker, and that's an amazing thing.
We made use of MIDI acoustic, actually, which is really funny. In one of our songs. So I think it was just a stock one, but the reason what we did was recorded. It was a bit last minute, where we're like a metal band, and there's a clean section in one of the songs, and it's all just clean electric guitar. It's like, wouldn't it be great to layer some acoustic on here? But the only acoustic in the studio at the time didn't have like fresh strings on it, so it sounded really dull. Yeah. So I tracked a part on it, and it sounded okay, just a bit like lacking in something. So the producer then got in, because it was a bit like, it was literally like the last half hour in the day kind of thing, and the producer then, is really clever of him, got a VST acoustic guitar, programmed in exactly what I played, and he sort of I think he did a shelf or something, or a sort of a high pass, or either way he basically took the transient from the VST acoustic and layered it onto what I was playing, just so you could hear the plinking of the strings that you didn't have in the. And I thought that was so clever of him.
I've heard that before on records, presumably with real acoustic guitars. I think like Baying of the Hounds by Opeth is a good example. There seems to be some of that going on later in the song, and I thought it was really, really cool, like a big strummed acoustic guitar under all of the kind of black metal-y strummed, distorted chords. It's a really cool sound. And when it's like when you're doing brass, you could MIDI all the brass, but then maybe make your primary instrument, your top line, a real recording, and then it makes the whole thing sound very, very realistic. It's interesting. I'm finishing recording and writing my next studio album at the moment, which I guess should come out sometime next year. And so far, I've done no MIDI because I've just tried to hire real musicians. But I do think, what would it be like if I didn't pay this Nashville session fiddle player money to play, and instead I just programmed it. But the human element is so important to what I do, that I feel like, I don't know, I'm not quite there yet. Maybe if I was doing a string quartet or something, I would use the aforementioned technique of hiring the top line and programming the rest.
Yeah, I guess it would almost be a bit of a futile thing, because MIDI might get so good to the point where you literally, I mean, you can't tell the difference to some stuff, you know, your average listener, especially in a mix, but it might get to the point where it can be so human, but you have to program in all that humanity that you might as well just spend the time paying for someone or learning to do it yourself, you know, to play it.
Yeah, but whilst the current trend is perfection, then it's gonna be always better just to program it, because it's going to end up sounding like a programmed instrument anyway, because you're going to be cutting it up to fit with the style right now, which is digital perfection. So that's my friend's approach. Again, I won't name him because I don't know if he wants it known that his guitars are programmed, but you know, he tells me that when he has clients come in, he sits them down and goes, right, so I'm just going to say it, I want to program all your guitars and you're not going to play shit. And the guitar player's like, what? And he's like, just trust me, we can spend half the day recording, and then we'll waste half the day, and then you'll decide to program it anyway, or I can just show you what I'm talking about off the bat. And obviously there's always resistance, and people will just waste the day trying to track it, and then he'll be like, yeah, it sounds okay, check this out. And they always say, fuck, we should have just done that from the beginning.
It's almost that, like, it's a direction we have to decide if we want to go in, I guess, as musicians.
Down to the individual artist. You know, at the end of the day, like creativity doesn't have these boundaries. Like, we're here talking about, you know, fashions and stylistic things and what is the done thing. I mean, even just the lineup of bass, drums, guitars, vocals, you know, acoustic guitars, all of that. I mean, to be creative is to, you know, is to have a blank canvas, really. I mean, there doesn't need to be a collective decision on any of these points. I mean, you know, look at bands like the bands that are the most interesting to listen to are always the most, like, unique sounding. You know, to me, like, there's only one Gojira, there's only one, like, Zealand, right? Like, these bands, they sound different because they have this open-minded stylistic approach, which isn't really conforming to what most people are doing. Polyphia, again, a great example. You know,
yeah,
that's where I'm. You know, I've got this crazy guitar here that you might be able to see. It's kind of this kind of semi-black baritone or semi-baritone.
Is that multi-scale as well?
Sorry?
Is that a multi-scale?
It's the scale length of somewhere between a baritone and a regular, and it is a fan fret. Yeah, but it's a very, very subtle fan fret. It's not, like, super extreme. But the point is, there's some really interesting, like pickup stuff, and the tuners kind of slide. They're like little B-bender type things. And by writing a tune with that, which I have to do when I get back from this next tour, it's going to be such a different sonic experience than playing a regular acoustic guitar, you know. And it takes that realization, or remembering that realization of just, like, I don't need to just play solo acoustic guitar and sound like this all the time. I can experiment, you know, pedals, other instruments, different types of instruments, you know, all that. And that's what's so fun, you know. It's just playing around with things. Don't need to wait for the collective approval of a scene to do that, you know.
Well, the irony is you're probably more likely to get that collective approval if you go and do your own thing.
That's exactly it. People, you know, I remember back in the day, I was thinking, oh, can I play like this? Is that okay? Does Andy McKee play like this? You know, I'd literally think, like, someone should have done this before. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm allowed. You know, and when you stop thinking like that, you can start making some truly original music, and that's what people will latch onto. That's what makes you you. All the things the record labels say, don't do this. It's too weird and different. You have to conform to this box. Don't do that. Do the weird, quirky things that make you sound like you. Because there's too much music out there right now. You know, there's so much music and so much stuff you have to try and stand out from. And the more quirky, unique things you can do, the better. Otherwise, you're just going to be, you know, like when what was it, Columbia or some label, I can't remember, signed AC/DC back in the day. They signed, like, bands that sounded just like AC/DC, and AC/DC were the ones that took off. No one remembers the other ones, you know, because they just sounded too similar.
There was no, you're totally right, and there's one more thing that I was going to mention, actually, in terms of, it's somewhat backtracking a bit, but going back to the processing side of things. What my guitar hero is Mark Tremonti, and whenever you hear him live, what I love is you'll hear things like his guitar feeding back before he starts a song, because I don't think he uses a noise gate or anything. and he'll hit this heavy riff, and it's oh yeah, you're hidden, and he'll play this heavy riff, and he'll be like rushing ahead of the count a little bit,
Yeah.
but it's like you get that energy of the real performer. And sure, like for the record, Alter Bridge's recordings are pretty flawless, like in terms of production and stuff.
Yeah. They're definitely produced like a band. I like their production a lot.
Yeah, I really enjoy. I think it's really well produced, and it doesn't always feel too gated or too. I suppose there's a definition of too gated. Depends what you like. But there's something I wanted to touch upon that you sort of mentioned earlier that we kind of didn't go into, where you're talking about your live, the sort of energy you get from the live performance, and saying, I can't remember, you said something about kicking a trash can. If you mess up live, you'd much prefer that than kind of. And you sort of offhand said, "Oh, you much prefer that to like existential anxiety."
I know people who are like professional YouTubers, and all they say is that they're burnt out and they hate it. I mean, to be fair, I've been hitting the road way too hard this year, and I got burnt out as well. But I still got some experiences from it, at least, I suppose.
Yeah, because my question was kind of, do you feel like, or maybe how do you go about finding balance and kind of purpose and things to engage yourself with mentally when you're not on the road, and when you're not, because that could obviously be a bit of a coin drop moment where you've been touring all this time, and then suddenly you're back home, like you just kind of like joke, I know you're sort of joking about it, but you're sort of there, you're just there with your thoughts then, aren't you? You're like,
yes. And that's why the pandemic sucked so much, because I just got this new house in a town where I didn't really know anyone, and I was to be near family and whatever, and it was just like suddenly fucking the exact opposite, and it was very hard to deal with. But social guy, see friends. Like I usually, when I come back from tour, I'll give myself an evening to myself just to watch TV and just lay on my couch and eat snacks, and then it's like, okay, let's do something, because I'm a doer. I want to be doing things. So yeah, clean the house, like trying to write, trying to play guitar, but usually I have to be in a specific mindset for that. But yeah, like emails are endless. There's always things to do that can give you a feeling of productivity. When you're self-employed, there's a limitless amount of things to do. I could, go and change all my YouTube descriptions with an updated merch link, things like that. There's always something. And the feeling of doing something lets me relax when it's time to sleep. I'm not very good at doing nothing, but I will take like a day, and just love watching my TV and just, maybe playing some Switch or something,
That was something I was saying a little while back. I was saying I feel like as a society we're not very good at doing nothing anymore, or just being fine with being a little bit bored in any one moment. Like I feel like we
smartphones.
Yeah, I'm as guilty as anyone. I think it's like we're very kind of I don't quite know how to put it. Sort of good at kind of getting, well, bad at dealing with just like, if I'm in the car, I have to have music on. I have to have things like, I'm not on my phone in the car, but like I have to have, I don't know, if I'm eating, I have to have Netflix on, and I might look at my phone in between as well. And it's like, it feels like we're not very good as a society at just like...
Yeah, it's because we're being sold time. So, or we are selling our time, rather, to advertisers and tech companies like that. The business model of the most powerful companies in the world is to say, okay, we want to get 2 hours of Joe's attention every day. We need Joe's eyes on us so we can make money from advertisers. Where are those 2 hours going to come from? Okay, well, half an hour is going to be when he's eating dinner. Okay, so what can we do to make him engage with us while he's eating his dinner? And that's filled up to the entire waking day. We are being rewired to engage with businesses so that they can make money from our time at every waking hour of the day. That's the business model. And smartphones enable that. Addictive applications enable that. I mean, I might have an account, but I don't have TikTok. Like I think someone made me an account, but I don't have it yet. I have to for my business. I'll have to ultimately bite that bullet. But I mean, just having one less social media app is the best feeling in the world. and everyone I know who's on these apps all the time, they just doom scroll, and the worst thing you can do, oh my god, is to start your day doom scrolling, because then you're just in a bad mood all day. Like everyone I know who just wakes up and spends half an hour just scrolling, it's like they'll see something they don't like, or they'll see like a competitor at what they do doing something that appears to show their achievements, and then they're feel guilty. And humans were never wired that way. We were wired to deal with an individual problem or an individual threat, not the entire world. The entire world's happenings. So yeah, it sucks. It's very detrimental to people's mental health. It's horrible. I hate it, but we have to engage with it for work. Like that's how we live in a capitalist world. In order to engage with that world and get through it and survive and become successful, if that's what you want, you have to engage with these models, because that's how the entire business world operates now. You will get an email 24 hours a day, and you're expected to answer it. It didn't used to be like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I remember hearing was it makes me think of two things. One is obviously we're wired to deal with a certain amount of people. We're wired to be used to dealing with probably double figures worth of people and not really much more. If you go right back to our sort of ancestral
community.
Yeah, and now we're suddenly exposed to not only everyone in the world, but everyone in the world's problems as well.
Yeah. Or everyone projecting how successful and amazing they are.
Yeah, everyone's brilliance, supposed brilliance. And the other thing was, someone said, if you're the best sort of test of if you're, I wish I could say who all these people are, but I can't remember. The best test is whether you're addicted to your smartphone is if you're on an aeroplane, or if you have no signal for whatever reason, and you still find yourself checking it, then that's when you know that it's just become a compulsion. And
I love aeroplanes, because that's another thing that's good about touring, is when I'm on the plane, I just don't have to engage with it at all. It's great. I did a recent flight to the States, and I spent the whole time on my laptop just making drum loops. I was just I was programming drum patterns in 5, because I was like, let's come up with some cool ideas. And I just spent the whole trip just doing that. It was great. It was like an 8-hour trip.
Yeah.
Nothing else other than just fucking around and being creative and very fulfilled.
Amazing. I can just see so many wasps flying around the front of my window. I'm like, I don't think they fixed this. So
keep the window sealed.
Huh?
Keep the window sealed.
Yeah, I think I might have to. So I think there's one. I'm going to ask you one sort of more musical question for the music nerds who are going, why are they talking about all of this? So and it's kind of what you just touched upon, and then I'll get you to ask your would you rather fight X, Y, and Z question. So with regards to how you write and kind of what your output, what your kind of style is, how do you feel you've benefited from embracing all the different elements of songs, right from drums, bass, guitar, vocals, and placing them on the one instrument? My initial thought of how I would look at that is, okay, I'm benefiting from taking in a holistic view of every song that I'm kind of using and exploring. Do you feel that's true for you?
Yeah, it definitely helps with songwriting, arranging. For example, like tomorrow, I'm going down to start rehearsals with this tour, and it's a band, and I know my place. I'm just the guitar player in that band. I open the shows as well, doing my full solo thing, but it helps knowing my role. You learn your role. Like, okay, well, what's the bass doing? What are the drums doing? Blah blah, and it does give you an appreciation for that. But that didn't necessarily come from performing those things on one instrument. It came from just dissecting it and mentally to arrange it for the instrument. And anyone can do that. Just listen to a piece of music, just listen to what the drums are doing, listen to what the bass is doing, So that's not necessarily coming from playing solo guitar. It's just the act of dissecting other people's songs and just absorbing songs in that way. I love that. I love listening to a song and I'll just listen to the bass line the whole time, But then the other way I benefit is, I suppose, financially, because when I'm on the road or when I'm recording, it's just me. I don't need to pay anyone else or travel anyone else. So that's why I other reason I tour so much is because it's actually a much better way to make a living for me than putting videos or songs on the internet, because there's zero mouths to feed. It's like if you get your fee and your merch sales to a certain level, if you're doing certain sized rooms, then that's kind of awesome, right? Although we do live in a world now, touring is becoming exponentially harder. I mean, we have the pandemic, but now we have ridiculous like gas price increases, plane strikes, train strikes. Everything's just chaotic. Trip I just did cost me £1,000 in extra expenses just because there were 4-hour wait times at Schiphol Airport in Amsterdam. Things like that. And with Brexit as well, like I was talking to my fan who plays bass in Skindred. You know Skindred?
Yeah.
So he's a Bristol guy, and he was saying that, like, just the carne stuff that they have to deal with now is insane. It's like doubling their expenses because they're having to allow for hit and run festivals. They're having to allow, 3 hours going to London to do a carne and then paying for it, and then doing the same thing when they land in the EU, and then you're adding to your bus driver's hours, you're adding to the bus hire, you're adding to having to pay all the crew for an extra day. Like all of this stuff just compounds into an unsustainable model for touring. So very grateful for being solo in that respect, because I can say this in case customs agents are watching or listening, but I can get away with just smuggling all the shit that I need in my suitcase rather than having to list it as imported goods. So there is that.
That was a very what's the word? You covered all bases with that for sure. But it's interesting. What I remember about you joking about on one of your videos, where you're joking about how you're cheaper to hire than a whole band because you've got the whole band in there. But I suppose then the flip side is that you're the sole beneficiary of everything that you make back on the tour. And like
it's a lot. And it's like people say, "Oh, is it not a lot more stressful?" And it's like, well, not really, because I'm a control freak, and I find it more stressful if I was dealing with other humans, like other personalities, and the drum wants this and that, and nah.
There's
again,
one.
I think if you were a shy person and unable to, or didn't enjoy meeting new people and making new friends when you land in these countries, then that would be different. Like I really enjoy that. I enjoy meeting the promoter and his family and going out to dinner and all of this stuff. That's part of it when you go solo. You have to do that. Whereas if you have your bros, you want to do it with them, then it's going to be more expensive to begin with, but you stick at it and you can certainly transcend the glass ceiling of a solo guitar player, one for sure.
I think we're a little bit afraid of, again, as a society, of going it alone. Like I've been to Download Festival a couple of times where I've just gone on my own and just kind of like met people, and it's been the best time.
I love it. I always go to the cinema by myself.
Yeah.
Like I'll go to restaurants by myself. I take a pair of headphones and my laptop and do some work and eat a meal and all that. That comes from being on tour. Like when you're on tour, you want to eat, you go and eat. You don't just like wait for everyone to be ready. You want to do your laundry, you go do your laundry. Like, it's nice. I like it. It's a dream gig. It is strange though, because I was talking to various industry people recently on various phone calls, and each one of them was like, "Wow, I had no idea you toured so much," and that's always interesting because it's such a part of my life. But because I don't post vlogs or regular YouTube uploads of these shows, it's almost like it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And I kind of like that, because then it means it's special. It's for people who bought tickets and traveled, who got a babysitter for the evening and traveled all the way to see you. It's for them, and it's a special moment. And I find it weird because there are some people now, some big streamers, who they'll be in like a huge band and they're playing, but then they'll turn to the side of the stage because they're streaming on Twitch or whatever with all their advertisements, on overlaid, and they're like singing to these people who aren't the paying people who have come to be there in real life, but yeah, they're getting the same show. And I don't want to reject tech and reject modern approaches, but that's just it seems so strange the way things are now. But I guess that's the money's got to come from somewhere, because it ain't coming from record sales. So there you go.
It does feel like it's being siphoned from the money. Is just being, you go, oh, we could do this now, and then 10 years later they're going, nope, no, you can't. There's another reason why you can't do that. Like you said with touring, it's like, oh, I guess we'll make money from touring then, and then million
Yeah,
other
yeah,
things.
it does feel like that sometimes, but I don't know. I think just being forward thinking, cutting out certain middlemen is a good idea. I mean, if you don't need to pay thousands of dollars for a website. You don't need to, anyone who's used. Now, the irony about what we were saying about being off your phone and all that is that the best way to be a successful, independent, self-employed creative is you have to live that lifestyle of engaging with those applications in order to be good at creating content for them to promote yourself. It's almost like you can either just be completely off it and hire an expert to do it at considerable expense, or be in it, have your mental health suffer and do it yourself. So there's a balance there I'm trying to find. I've got a manager now, but they're not super switched on to exactly what's happening this week in the acoustic guitar scene trend wise, or what the latest theme is, or all of that. So I have to still engage with it, and that gets sucky sometimes.
I think people will just appreciate hearing that, even someone like yourself who might have a much larger following than the average musician, and the people will appreciate hearing that even you are kind of going, yeah, I'm still figuring out that balance. I think it just proves that it's quite present for a lot of people.
It's the same for everyone of any level. Like I did a headline tour in the States recently, and the guy who was opening for me, an amazing guitar player named Trevor Gordon Hall, we were kind of joking, being like, being on tour right now is detrimental to our career, because it's almost like if instead of being on tour, we were at home making videos, we would get more fans, and that would have a longer lasting impact than these physical gigs, which bring in money and are fun, but they don't necessarily grow your career. What they do grow is promoter statistics, so that next time you play in a bigger venue, and that leads to more money and more bums on seats, and that kind of thing. But we are at this strange post-pandemic time where you can be a successful musician earning, 40, 50 grand a month without ever leaving your home. That's interesting. It's an interesting thing.
It's a crazy world gone.
But going back to what I was saying about competing for one's time, there will only be a handful of people operating on that level in that environment, because a scene that engages with a figurehead of that genre only has finite hours that they could probably count on one hand of free time per day, which they engage with the stream or the Twitch output of that person. So there's probably like a handful of guitar influencers on that platform, whereas there's thousands out there in the world touring, because there's a lot more venues and evenings all around the world than there are hours of an individual to engage with a scene on a platform like Twitch. So I would argue it's a harder nut to crack than creating a touring circuit, unless you hate getting on planes and traveling, in which case, fuck me.
I guess the message of the podcast: seize a day, but do it yourself.
It's I guess it's just like, it's okay to think outside the box and just do whatever it is that you want to do, even if no one's done it before you, because that's what you'll end up getting for, and that'll make you stand out, which is a benefit. If you want to, like, touring and digital are not, you don't have to be one or the other. It's about finding the balance. But you can stay at home and do digital if you want, but be prepared to deal with the anxieties that come with that. Like, I have a whole bunch of friends who just check numbers all the time. They check statistics, and it is not good for your mental well-being at all. Whereas, playing a great show, I don't think they're feeling like it. Than an audience just being standing ovation and all that stuff. It's just, it's talk about being validated as an insecure teenager. There isn't really anything better than that. If someone's enjoying a YouTube video, it doesn't mean that it's good. It doesn't mean that you've created an actual emotional response with someone. They're watching passively in their underwear whilst drinking a can of Coke and talking to their friend at the same time, but they're engaging with your content because it has a funny title. That it's a different thing. It's not actively creating an experience where they're just laser focused on what you have created. That's not what YouTube is. and it never will be that because it's passive. It's in their house. It's on their phone. It's while they're walking. It's people aren't as engaged as when it's just bums on seats watching the show. So it's a great gift to be able to do that. And I'd highly recommend anyone who is thinking about getting on the road, I'd highly recommend people do it. The world's a crazy place financially for that kind of thing, especially if you're just starting out, but it's the best feeling in the world. And all that anxiety you might feel from spending your time on these things, smartphone, you don't really have when you're doing that. So it's a nice break from that world.
Yeah, stop the voices.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, thank you. I mean, that's I think we covered a lot of bases, which is good.
Wasps, all that stuff.
Huh?
Wasps' nests as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can only apologise for the numerous distractions. It seems like everything in my day seems to have happened exactly when I planned for it not to.
That's all right.
Everything around my day, I suppose, really. The doorbell went as well. And that could have been an emergency. I don't even know. I'm just assuming it's wasp nest related. I'm looking forward to coming back and hearing what your distractions were for the 8 seconds that I disappeared. So, so I need to get you to ask a question for the next guest.
Okay.
And I need you to promote an artist that maybe doesn't get the love they deserve. That's the two things.
Okay. Well, let's start with the artist.
Okay. So
one of my favorite guitar players and from Finland is named Petteri Sariola. Petterisariola. And he's a fellow endorser of the guitar which I play. I have my signature guitar there. It's all blown out in the light, but it's by the unfortunately named Andreas Kuntz Guitars. That is Cunt instead. With a C, the hard C as well. And I've known Petteri, or we call him, for many, many years. In fact, I've known him since the MySpace days. He is the real pioneer of this kind of modern finger style techniques that I draw a lot from. He also sings, and he's one of these people that's so good live that I don't think people appreciate what he's actually doing because it's so polished and so clean and sounds so good. I don't think people understand it. And I'd highly recommend people go check him out. He's got some great videos online. And unfortunately, only one of his albums is even on Spotify. I don't know why that is, but maybe you'll be able to go digging and find them. His album Phases is amazing. He did an album of covers, which he did for King Records in Japan, which are not available in Japan. It might be available online. I don't know. Amazing. Needs more eyeballs for sure, and earballs.
Nice. Eyeballs and earballs, yeah. And so speaking of, I don't know why speaking of eyeballs and earballs. But anyway, I guess I was just thinking of how ridiculous your question was. I guess you could have maybe an eyeball and earball related question if you want.
So who's my question for?
I'm not telling you.
Oh, damn.
You
want me to just come up with a question?
That's what keeps it interesting. It's an open-ended. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow? That's a brilliant question. We'll see if he gets it.
Yeah, there's only one right answer.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I thought there were two answers.
Are they British? I see you know your questions well. Are they British or American or what?
He's from somewhere. He's from a Scandinavian country, which I cannot remember.
Okay. Okay. What is people are Stephen Unladen? Okay.
That's a good question. I can introduce him to the reference if he doesn't.
Yeah. Who asked my question?
That was from Miles Dimitri Baker.
Okay. Who's? Oh, you got to tell me who this person is now.
So he's a singer from the band. His name is Andreas from a heavy metal band called Cabal. Is that how you pronounce it? Cabal. Sort of up and coming.
Good luck to Andreas. I don't think he'll get it, but we'll see.
But then the thing is, what it is, it's a beautiful opportunity if he doesn't, for me to introduce him to Monty Python. So
exactly. Awesome.
Can you imagine if I said it's a brilliant opportunity to introduce him to the work of Rowan Atkinson, and then just the most criminally wrong British reference?
I like that. Wrong references. Good
Yeah.
old Rowan Atkinson. What a national treasure. For some reason, I thought you were going to say Ronan Keating.
Why not?
Life is a roller coaster, just go ride it.
Yeah.
Nice one, Joe.
I'm so well.
Awesome, man. Well, nice to speak to you, man. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun. I got to run because I got to practice. I got tour rehearsals tomorrow, and I need to learn a few new tunes.
Practice overrated.
I've got to. Sorry, it is overrated unless you're paid to learn songs, and then you should probably learn the songs.
Practice underrated. Yeah. Payment is underrated. There we go. No, it's not.
There we go.
Awesome. Thank you, man.
Dude, it's a pleasure. Thanks so much.
That.
Yeah. See you next time.